Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 58th edition of Data Bytes, hosted by Public Digital. I'm Gavin Freegard, and it's wonderful to see so many of you this evening here at Broadway House and online. Let's start in the usual way. Hands up if you've been to Data Bytes before. Welcome back. Hands up if this is your first Data Bytes. Welcome. Hopefully, there will be a slide appearing on the screen shortly. I'm going to have to improv until that happens. Or talk amongst yourselves. Well, we have some brilliant speakers for you this evening, and as we often do at Data Bytes, on a wonderful variety of topics as well. So data matching, APIs, but also presenting and visualizing data. Now, we love data viz here at Data Bytes, and not to put any pressure on our presenters, but they'll do well if they can top this chart that several friends sent to me over the summer, which is not appearing. There it is. It's worth the wait, wasn't it? It brings a whole new meaning to data streams. Thank you. If you're worried that I'm about to unleash a flood of bad river puns, I'm happy to put those rumours to bed. Honestly, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. Let's start with some housekeeping. We're on the record and are being live streamed, obviously. If you're on social media, the hashtag is PDDataBytes. And you can put your questions to our speakers via Slido, bit.ly/databytes58, all lowercase. If you're here in the room, you can, of course, raise your hand as well. What does Data Bytes do? We aim to put good work involving data, especially in the public sector, on the record so we can all learn from it, provide a space for the different data communities in and around government to come together, and bring to life what better data can do for all of us, whether we think of ourselves as data people or not. How does Data Bytes work? Well, normally, Data Bytes consists of 4 presentations on interesting data projects. Each of our speakers will have 8 minutes to present. Yes, just 8 minutes. There are 8 bits in a byte, hence 8 minutes in a data byte. Each speaker will then take questions for 8 minutes. Yes, just 8 minutes. And then we move on to the next speaker. So 4 presentations of 8 minutes, each followed by questions for 8 minutes. There is a slight change to that this evening, which I will come to. You can watch the previous 8 Data Bytes at Public Digital, including July's Digital Sustainability Special at bit.ly/PDDataBytes, all lowercase. Well, you can watch most of that one. We did have to do something we've never done before and cut video of one of the speakers because of the government's new civil service speaking guidance. Thank you. Didn't even rehearse that. That was great. The first 49 Data Bytes were hosted by the Institute for Government. You can watch those at bit.ly/IFGDataBytes, capital IFGDB. That's Data Bytes 46, where the ONS talked about their local statistics work, which may also feature tonight. But before we get to tonight's speakers, let's run through our usual recap of what's happened in the world since our last event through the medium of charts. Early September was nerd nirvana for data people, like me, who are interested in both politics and football. We had not only a government reshuffle, but a football one with the end of the transfer window. Let's start with the latter. I hope that would will the screen back on, but unfortunately not. Should have had a whiteboard. I could have drawn the charts as we were going along. It will appear. The jokes are really not worth the wait. But you knew that. I'm going to have to speak very quickly to fit it all into that. It's like a little mindfulness break. We can all just...
We're just going to offer up more bad water-based puns.
I have a reservoir of them.
They're definitely in the flow.
Oh. Anyone else want to channel some?
We were just wondering whether you were about to sink or swim, Gavin.
If anyone can work Oxbow Lake into a pun, I'll be very impressed. Hopefully the charts will resurface at some point.
The text got waterlogged.
Things are happening on the screen in front of me. But sadly not the one behind me. Just think though, this will get edited online, so you've got the director's cut version tonight. So can I get through all of this in 40 seconds? I suspect not. Oh, oh. Try not to look at the little previews. You don't spoil the surprise. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Neil. Thank you. Well done. And thank you, everyone, for bearing with us. So, where was I? Yes, early September, Nerd Nirvana, government reshuffle, football transfer window. So let's start with the latter. Let's start with the transfer window. So this is how much each English Premier League club spent on new players this summer. We'll come to the gaps in a moment. But does anyone want to guess who the biggest spenders were? That bar right at the top, more than £400 million on new players. Any guesses? Was that Liverpool followed by Arsenal?
Yeah.
Top was Liverpool, Chelsea in second, which is the highest they're going to be this season. But yes, defending champions Liverpool on top, more than £400 million spent. That's a lot of money. Now, to put all of that in perspective, here's where the annual administration budgets of several government departments would fit. Now, the recent dramas in politics and football actually have something in common. Big Ange. On the left, as it were, Angela Rayner. We've got Angela Rayner, who resigned as Housing Secretary, Deputy Prime Minister and Deputy Leader of the Labour Party. On the right, new Nottingham Forest boss, Ange Postecoglou, sacked as Tottenham manager at the end of last season despite winning a trophy. So both of them previously leaders of organisations loved by some in North London, where one recent victory wasn't enough to dispel a long record of disappointment and underachievement. I'm an Arsenal fan, I can never let Spurs joke go. Now, this is what the ministerial resignation chart looked like after the last Data Bites. Rayner isn't the only minister to quit since. A Lord's Whip, the Homelessness Minister and the Investment Minister have also gone, leaving the chart looking like this. This means Keir Starmer's government has had more non-reshuffle resignations than any other recent administration at this point, a sign of the challenges of governing in these volatile times, but perhaps also a return to a stronger resolution of standards and ethics issues. Now, the reshuffle itself had quite an impact on DCIT, the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. Here were the ministers before, and here are the ministers after, an almost total clear-out, with only Lord Vallance remaining in post. And regular viewers will know that the churn isn't confined to ministers, with lots of senior data and digital roles in the civil service still to be filled. Last time, we just acquired a new permanent secretary at DCIT. Over the summer, we got a new perm sec at ONS, but lost the chair of the UK Statistics Authority. We have a new interim chair there, and also a new interim government chief data officer, who sat alongside an interim chief digital officer until they left this week, leading to some uncertainty about how those senior roles will now pan out. There was also a big change in the diplomatic world, with Peter Mandelson sacked as UK ambassador to the United States. Here's a chart of all of the other ambassadors to the US since 1979, and here's Mandelson's rather shorter tenure, just there. It wasn't only the government with comings and goings to deal with. In July, another one of Reform's MPs resigned the whip. Here's a very sophisticated chart showing the number of Reform MPs over time. Though just this week, Tory MP Danny Kruger defected to Reform, meaning we need to update it. There we are. Don't worry, I'm nearly done, because in case your interest in politics is flagging, Reform gives us a segue into one of the other stories of the summer. According to a survey, more of their supporters than any other party thought councils were removing flags not because they posed a safety risk, but because they simply didn't like them. Don't worry about the detail of that chart. It's simply there for me to be able to say, do you know what that is? A flagpole. Thank you. Let's turn to tonight's speakers. First, we have Ahmad Barclay from the Office for National Statistics on surfacing local insights, mapping, scrollytelling and semi-automation. Our second speaker will be Leonardo Mazzone from the Department for Business and Trade on matching companies across datasets. Our third speaker was due to be Andrea Barry from the Youth Futures Foundation on their new data dashboard. Unfortunately, Andrea's had to pull out at the last moment. We are hoping to find a way to share her excellent work with you all at some point soon. Now, that does mean we have a free speaking slot if anyone fancies a bit of Data Bytes open mic. I'll let you think about that through the course of the event if anyone wants to take the fourth and final slot tonight. Otherwise, our final speaker will be James Freeland from the Government Digital Service on their API programme. We'll be back on the 23rd of October with an AI special. Even more excitingly, you can now sign up right now for that event using this QR code. How excited are you with the technology designed in 1994? That was quite impressive. Of course, I'm now just going to talk over this slide for a bit, very, very slowly, for you to get your phones out, scan it, and sign up to the event right now. You can also sign up for updates, including details of our November date and future events at bit.ly/pddatabytes, all lowercase. If you work for a public sector organisation and would like to speak or know someone who should, come and speak to me afterwards or email events@public.digital. And if you'd like to show your support for Data Bytes, the best thing you can do is tell a friend or share something you hear tonight on social media. There'll be video, audio and slides available for you to share in the next few days. That is definitely more than enough from me. And that brings us to our first speaker tonight, and that's Ahmad.
Thank you, Gavin. So, as you will have noticed, I was one of the people holding up my hand to say I haven't attended one of these events before. So, I wasn't aware of the whole 8-minute theme. So, when I came up with the title, it was a little bit hopeful in terms of what I could cover in 8 minutes. But I've tried to kind of trim out the slides from a longer presentation. Hopefully, the content is still there. Am I waiting for this to say 8 minutes on it before I officially start? So
It'll catch.
Okay, there we go. It's going. Oh God, I shouldn't have said that. Okay, so yeah. So basically, I wanted to talk about. I'll say so who I am. This is who I am. There's my socials. Yeah, so I was going to talk about surfacing local insights. So this is really, I'm going to focus in on kind of one project that kind of comes out of Census. So I joined the ONS 5 years ago now, right at the start of kind of planning for how we would disseminate Census. And it's a kind of once in a decade thing. We now confirmed we're going to have another one of these in a few years. And it's a massive kind of opportunity to kind of understand data, and for me, you know, in the digital publishing department in ONS, data visualization, to communicate large volumes of data. And obviously, you know, the data itself might look something like this. Vast majority of people would not know where to throw that. And the geographies look something like this. Again, vast majority of people who've responded to Census wouldn't know much what to do with that. And obviously when we put out the Census and got a 97% response rate, we said it's about us. So we kind of made a promise to people that, you know, we're going to get this data back to you and you're going to understand it. But who is us? So we have a way of thinking about user personas. These are the ones we were defining at the time in the ONS. So there's, you know, from on the left, you've got these sort of technical users, all the way through to sort of, you know, inquiring citizens at the other end. Some of them do just want those big spreadsheets. Other ones, they really just want to understand it. They want you to tell what's the insight? How does it relate to me? What does this say about my area? And yeah, what do those people need? So we kind of mapped out lots of different kind of products, but I'm going to narrow in on this one, which relates to more about that kind of, you know, the help me understand kind of products. And here, this is where we zoom in on scrollytelling and robojournalism. And I will explain kind of how these come together. So I was going to look at this project, which was actually actually before Census, we did this project, which was about exploring local income disparity. So we can say an experiment in scrollytelling and semi-automated journalism, or AK, lots of numbers explained. So we were looking at local income disparity as measured by income deprivation in the IMD, the indices of multiple deprivation. So this is like very small neighborhood LSOA level statistics. And we were trying to build up this story about, okay, what's kind of going on at a local level in terms of income disparity. And the idea was to kind of use this kind of multi-layered narrative. And we looked at, you know, we're not just looking at those individual neighborhoods, but we're trying to understand kind of on the level of the local authority, like how deprived the local authority is, but then also trying to understand the kind of how the deprivation kind of falls within that local authority. So basically we use a number of devices here. One is this kind of mapping and looking at these deciles. And you can see something from that. You can like look at lots of different maps of places. You can see that one is more deprived, one is less deprived. But trying to build up this kind of narrative. So there was this one element about extremes. So this is about, you know, in the most deprived local authorities, notably there was this kind of huge gap between the most and least deprived kind of neighborhoods within those authorities, much less true in the least deprived authorities. But there were still wealthy areas. You know, you look at the Wirral, the most deprived, actually has, you know, very, very well-off neighborhoods within it. So we were trying to also look at this idea of clustering. So this idea of Moran's eye, which is a kind of fairly complex kind of statistical concept, which the kind of average inquiring citizen maybe wouldn't really be able to process necessarily. But we wanted to bring this into this kind of overall narrative to kind of really help people to understand kind of both the ideas of this kind of how income deprived a place is has this correlation, but there are interesting outliers as well. And yeah, we kind of pulled this together. So when I talked about scrollytelling, it was really this idea about how do you weave this narrative together. And I can give a kind of little snapshot of that, hopefully, of this what's it called is working, the GIF on the animation on the next slide. But just this idea, so the narrative device that we tried to use to pull this whole story together was this idea of starting local. So right up front, you're selecting your own local authority. And that's being used as a kind of lens to kind of, you're zooming in, you're understanding like what it is about this income disparity between, the income profile within an area, but then saying like, this is, these neighbourhoods, there are 32,000 of them in the country. And here you can start to see that more areas that kind of have a similar profile to your area. And it kind of, the narrative unfolded through each of these kind of topics that I've raised, Moran's Eye and things like that, these kind of quite woolly technical ideas. But we found actually that, this kind of thing, I wouldn't say went viral, but when we released it, it kind of really moved around in the kind of online circles, kind of really people were talking about Moran's Eye. And I think what we discovered was really that by designing for these people, the kind of, I want to, just tell me what the data says, it helps you to reach this other group of people, the kind of more, the policymakers, the experts as well, by creating that kind of buzz around it. And the result of this was Moran's Eye turns up, based on exactly this kind of analysis that the team had done in the Levelling Up report, which was the white paper, gosh, I don't know what year this was now, probably 2021, 22. So it's kind of, I guess I kind of wanted to show that it's not just a kind of shiny way of presenting information, but hopefully that it's a really useful vehicle for kind of delivering those insights and getting them to the places that matter. So I think actually I can just about leave it there. I can say a little bit about kind of some of the slides I skipped out, which are kind of, so off the back of this, really we were able to do a lot of these things for Census. We've built up a lot of kind of technical kind of know-how to do these projects. We have like libraries you can find online through GitHub and things like that, that kind of have the components both for the kind of robo aspect, that this kind of thing that you're taking data for areas and generating text from that. So if you saw some of the early slides, you could see that there's a bit of narrative about Liverpool or whatever. So we've got these tools that we're able to kind of reuse those things. And then also in terms of the components, like to build these kind of scrolly-telling articles and things like that. So as a result, we've kind of repeated the process quite a number of times, and we have there's one tool to look out for is kind of house prices in your area. So that's based on that same robo journalism thing. Takes a spreadsheet of data, generates a report for every area in the country. I shall leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take questions for 8 minutes now, so please tell us who you are if you can. Remember, we are on the record. If you're in the room, wait for the mic. Please do keep your questions short, as the timer will start with the first question. And a reminder, if you're not brave enough to ask your question out loud, you can go to bit.ly/databytes58. And of course, if you're watching online, please use Slido to submit your question. Who would like to ask the first question?
Hey, Will Langdale, Department for Business and Trade. I wondered if you knew going in that you wanted to tell that story about clustering with Moran's Eye, or whether you wanted to just tell a more general story about clustering and then came to the statistic afterwards.
Yeah, so I probably didn't give enough credit to the kind of analytical team that we worked together with on this. So it was a little bit weird because there was an aspect that we did want to experiment with the format as well. So in a way, we started working with the team because they had a piece of analysis that kind of sort of fitted the format a little bit. And yeah, so I think we had, it was partly inspired by some work that was done, some academic work that was done by Andrew Ray. I don't know, is it Alistair Ray? So he's quite well known in the kind of online communities around geography and things like that. So this idea about these kind of profiles of inequality. So that was one of the kind of starting points. And I think Moran's Eye was also kind of, I don't know if it featured in that, but it was something that the team wanted to kind of build onto that, this idea of, profiles, but also this spatial distribution. So I think all of those were kind of part of the mix, but I think there was an aspect, I was working with a journalist colleague who was also kind of core to this, so this kind of building out that narrative and what could we really fit within within this article in terms of the kind of sheer kind of volume of information and different concepts. So I think it's a little while ago now, so I think there were probably some things that we did kind of really narrow down, but that definitely wasn't one of them. And I think we really wanted to kind of get this aspect of, what was it called, both the spatial kind of disparity as well as that kind of absolute disparity within each area. And then sort of using those as a metric that you can almost compare across different areas. So.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go online for the next question. This is from Anonymous. Good evening to you. Data themselves are neutral, but once you start processing and creating narratives using them, your point of views must be reflected. How have you guaranteed neutrality as public sector while you use narrative to approach the personas effectively? I think it's that classic data viz question.
Yeah, well, I don't think there is such a thing as neutrality in a way. Like, I think everything has, just the selection of working on a particular topic, I guess, has an element of you're making a choice there. But I think, one of the things was that the data was always available through the piece, that we were kind of, at the end of it, you could explore the data as well. So it wasn't like we were focusing narrowly on like one particular area or our selection of areas that we wanted people to look at. I think we were specifically, and almost this was what made this different to a typical article where you kind of have to stop there. You can pick out 4 or 5 areas, talk about them, and then you're at the end of the article. This one, because you could make the selections, you could explore more areas, and at the end you had the opportunity to kind of look at all the areas. So I'd like to think that level of sort of transparency helps the idea that you can be neutral on something. But yeah, no, it's a tricky one. I don't think you can ever be completely neutral in something, I suppose.
Great, thank you. Let's come back into the room for the next question. I'll take at the front first, and I'll come to you next.
Hello, Sarah Livermore, Department for Business and Trade. Do you have web analytics data or any other feedback showing where people dwell, what they're particularly interested in on these pages?
So we would have had, that's a good question because it's going back a little way, but I think we had, so there was analytics in terms of the kind of the volume of usage. We had kind of surveys on these things as well because they were new formats. I think it was quite difficult, the sort of dwell thing is quite difficult because of the nature of scrollytelling, because you're kind of a long page and the regions don't necessarily relate back to what it looks like you're hovering over, if that makes any sense. But in terms of the feedback on the format, I think it was broadly very positive. And I think one thing we discovered through doing this as well was that the way you write these kind of articles is you kind of, by nature, have to break them down into this sort of linear captioned narrative, which actually makes the story fairly consumable, even for someone who's not engaging with the visual. So you do, in fact, have this kind of linear narrative that people can kind of follow through, and the visual kind of enhances that. Whereas before doing it, we almost had this assumption that we're kind of cutting out this large, well, not maybe that large, but this portion of users who can't engage with the visual, but it didn't necessarily work out that way. So.
Thanks. Take the next question from...
Hi, David Durant. Kind of a bit of overlap with the previous question in terms of feedback, but instead of digital analytics, did you have an opportunity during development to get face-to-face feedback with representatives of the personas, especially the folks who are more public interest, and how did you find those folks?
So we do have, like, within the sort of digital publishing division, we have user researchers. So in this case, we had an opportunity really after we put the piece out to kind of go with that and some other pieces we were working on at the time, back to users. And like I say, I think the general feedback, I think, was overwhelmingly positive. And I think the challenge is, it tended to be like, it's the thing of kind of, people would be commenting on little bits here and there rather than saying, oh, I just don't get this format. So generally it was very much, the kind of survey feedback. I did re-review one of them recently, and it was I think it was pretty much overwhelmingly positive. There was almost no one who was saying, I found this harder to understand, if you know what I mean.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go online for the next question. This is from Lauren. Good evening to you, Lauren. Are there more data visualization or geospatial storytelling techniques that you're planning to test out?
That's a very good question. I mean, there's probably other ones that we did test out, I imagine. I mean, I think that the main kind of, what would you call it? The kind of binary, the way you divide visuals is between the kind of exploratory and explanatory. I think a lot of people would probably know that idea. And this kind of tries to bridge across the two. So it's broadly explanatory, but it kind of allows that level of kind of exploration as well. So I think most of the stuff that I'm involved in at the moment is very much on the exploratory end. So I've been working with actually some of the guys who presented not that long ago on Explore Local Statistics. So that's the main project I'm involved in at the moment. But we do, we kind of do look for opportunities to try new things. At the moment, it's obviously a fairly challenging environment. But yeah, but around census, we did try a number of other things, including sort of quizzes and games and things like that as a way of kind of engaging with the data. I want to say, yeah, we try. Yeah, I mean, various formats derived from kind of scrolly telling and the kind of robo journalism side, where it was more like robo journalism reports. So where we're kind of just generating something that's more of a more dense kind of read on how your area's changed in 10 years and things like that.
Brilliant.
But yeah, happy to talk after.
And do go and explore all of that for yourselves as well. Ahmed, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And our second speaker tonight is Leonardo.
Hello, I'm Leonardo Mazzone. I'm a data scientist at the Department for Business and Trade. And a few years ago, I was working on a machine learning algorithm to predict the export propensity of different types of businesses. And that required mapping financial and sector data to export data, which came from a different data source, naturally without a common identifier. And I quickly realized that the single best way that I could improve the performance of my model was to improve the underlying data matching. So I went around the department to find out if anyone had a better solution to this problem than me. And I realized that lots of different teams across the department, every single directorate, so we're talking about analysis, policy, developers, had all sorts of disparate solutions to this. So that resulted in lots of duplication of effort on data matching, inconsistency, lack of convergence towards best practices, etc. So more recently, me and a small team decided to try and tackle this problem. And we quickly came across Splink, which is, many of you might know this, it's a product by the Minister of Justice that they use for linking people data as they move through the justice system. And it's very popular in government, I think for three reasons. First of all, it is very good, so well architected and state-of-the-art model. Secondly, it's open source, so the code is easy to access, but also well documented. And finally, it is general. So the Ministry of Justice did not encode their preferences or settings. They just kind of gifted us with a very general way of expressing rules on how to compare probabilistically pairs of records. And these rules work at the level of pairs within a single data set if you're deduplicating, or between pairs of data sets if you're linking. So we wanted to use Splink, and we realized, unfortunately, that there isn't an obvious way to scale it to many more than 2 data sets. So one thing that you can do is you can have a linker for every possible pair of data you want to link. So in an example where you have 10 data sources, that would give you 45 linkers, which is quite a lot if you need to run them every day, perhaps, or maintain them and evaluate on an ongoing basis. So we started building our own framework around Splink to make it really simple for us to use Splink. And we thought about all the different ways that you can combine linkers. One such way is sort of like a divide and conquer approach, or you can have incremental steps where at each step you're adding in an extra data source. In this example, again, thinking about the 10 data sources, you would have 9 linkers instead of 45, which is much more manageable. So we call this framework Matchbox, and if Splink gives you a way of expressing your own kind of custom rule for comparing pairs of records and pairs of data sets, Matchbox operates at a higher level, and it's a way of expressing ways of composing linkers and dupers and to make multiple data sources really easy to interrogate in a joined-up fashion. And it also provides a database where you can store in a central location the result of running your matching models. As we were building this, we were aware that some of the data sources you might want to join could be sensitive, so we built this in such a way that the Matchbox database actually is never sent any of the real data, it just stores references to the data, so it knows how to stitch together data sets but not what their content is. And for that reason, we need a client in the middle, which could be a user like an analyst or a data pipeline, and they run a Python library that we published. And they need to have separately access to the Matchbox database and the data sets that they might or might not have access to for running queries and for running matching models. So having a standard way of defining whole data matching pipelines, as well as a single location for storing the results, means that we can bring many people with us on this journey to kind of collaborate to build a shared ecosystem of matched data. And all these teams and individuals have an interest in making sure that the results are good. So Matchbox also, we've implemented within it an interface for sampling matching results, prioritizing the ones that are most uncertain, and showing them to users, gathering their feedback, and forming validation data, which we can then use for assigning performance scores to our models, which essentially turns this into a problem that is measurable and iterative. In other words, we can evolve our models on an ongoing basis with everyone sort of benefiting from that. We have deployed Matchbox in dbt. We have a first pipeline linking 7 data sets, and we're just in the process of onboarding the first users and dashboards who will be using this for measuring the impact of our export support services and for joining up the regional and central business support offer. So I've spent most of today and we've spent most of the last few months on this, working on the technology. We'd love maybe to return in a year and talk about the value that this has brought for dbt, but we suspect that many other organizations outside dbt could be much more advanced than us in terms of the thinking on specific rules for matching business data. The nice thing is that it is very simple within Matchbox to create new methodologies and systematically compare them against our baseline and swap old models and new models in a way that is essentially invisible to users. So I didn't mention that we have a way that essentially runs a Matchbox pipeline and produces a lookup, which is the thing that supports the analyst and the dashboard that we enable. And it is essentially a very simple SQL table mapping between different kinds of business identifiers. So as a closing remark, I mentioned open source as one of the factors leading to Splink's success. It is also a very core principle to us. We want to work transparently in the public interest, making sure that the result of our hard work is easy to reuse. And a man can dream. Maybe one day we'll get community contributions. But anyway, it's hard work. It means maintaining up-to-date documentation. If you're interested in this, check it out, and please keep us honest if it is not quite as accessible as we wish it to be. Similarly, we need to make sure that we have a robust security pipeline to ensure we don't accidentally leak passwords to the public or anything like that. And we need to, again, make this general. So another way in which that needs to happen is we need to separate the software from the infrastructure on which we deploy it at dbt specifically, which takes discipline, but also means that hopefully in the long term it will benefit us because we're not marrying it to kind of our current cloud provider or anything like that. So if you find any of that interesting, please check out the links. There is also an email at the bottom. It will go to me and to Will Langdale, who came up with most of the good ideas that went into Matchbox. He's also in the room tonight if you're here in person. So yeah, let's connect. Thanks very much for having me.
you very much, Leo. A reminder that if you're online or in the room, you can ask questions via Slido, which is bit.ly/databytes58, all lowercase. Do tell us who you are if you can, and wait for the mic if you're in the room. Who would like to ask the first question? We've got one here. I'll come to you next.
Hello, my name is Chris Pitcher, and I work in a hospital, and you are my new favourite friend. I would love to know more about the anonymisation aspect of it, particularly around like how that originated sort of like in the MOJ thing, because we would probably most want to use this to actually identify people. So, for example, just as a use case, say that you are a regular user of a particular outpatient's clinic, but you give us a slightly different name every time, and we would like to be able to identify that you are on our 8th visit, and you've given us, for whatever reason, maybe English is not your first language, things like that, we've got 8 different names for you, but we would like to be able to identify you rather than anonymise you. So is this going to potentially solve our problem, please?
I hope so. So we don't do any sophisticated anonymization. We just make sure that we don't store the data in the Matchbox database, but the data still exists somewhere on the data warehouse, perhaps, that it originates from. So this is really just a trick to simplify data governance from our point of view. But if you are a user, an analyst, or whatnot, who can access the original data sources and can access the Matchbox database to bring them together, the Matchbox client abstracts away the complexity of using the DB and the sources and sort of doing that weaving. So you can definitely use it to get the actual source data.
You're going to regret telling me that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Livermore again. Yeah, this is so cool because it's like 2 open source projects from government, Splink and Matchbox. Like, we're lucky to have 1, and then we have 2 related to data. Just wondering the extent, like, you kind of liaise with each other, you point users to the other product, or do they kind of, at the moment, stay quite separate?
Yeah, we speak to the Minister of Justice regularly. As you might imagine, they had to solve a lot of the same problems, so we're trying not to reinvent the wheel, but to reuse best approaches that are out there. Unfortunately, some of the solutions that they've applied to scale to the many datasets problem, they haven't released to the public, or they haven't made them general enough for us to reuse. So, for example, the way that they deal with many data sets is actually the thing that I initially thought wasn't viable. And I think it works okay for them, even though we don't think that it's generally like a globally optimal solution. But we do want to interoperate, and Splink is a really good system for when you have your more your trickier data sets that need some kind of probabilistic record matching. So we would use it ourselves. And we recommend our users to use it for that kind of scenario. But crucially, they don't have to use Splink. They can also use something much more naive or deterministic, and it all works kind of well together. I don't know if I've answered the question. We're trying to talk all the time. Yeah.
Thanks. Next question. I'll stay in the room. Otherwise, you're going to make me ask one, and nobody wants that. I suppose picking up on a not dissimilar theme, and I'm thinking about what you were saying about sort of community and getting other people to use things. Where do you start in terms of doing that? How do you find the other people in government that aren't Splink, that might be interested in using it, might have lessons that you can learn from? Where are they, and how do you find them? So we are lucky in that it is an extremely widespread problem. There are communities out there, like there's a cross-government data linkage champions community. The issue is that it's sort of like an indirect problem. People don't really want to think about data matching. That's the boring part of their job that they try to skip. So even if you're not necessarily
aware that there is the key to unlocking some of the value that you're not currently getting from your data. Like once you manage to tell that story right, you do start to see that it is a extremely widespread and lots of different areas of organizations of any size can benefit from some, not necessarily from this solution, but from some kind of systematic way of abstracting away data matching and making it reusable and making sure that everyone else can benefit from the best standards that you have on data matching.
Great, thank you. In terms of finding people, a perfect question from Cerys Ponting from the Welsh Government. Evening to you, Cerys. I also work on trade in Wales, and I'd love to know more detail about this project. Can you tell us about the live projects DBT are trialling this with?
Yeah, we have a. I'm not going to say too much because I don't know if I can, but there's a tool called Expand Your Business, which is a kind of online digital service that connects businesses with expert support, and it is about understanding whether that is it's kind of working well, and companies are investing in the UK or scaling as a result of it, and that means bringing in our internal data sources that talk to the digital service and some other company data repositories like Companies House.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll come back into the room for the next question. I'm going to hold a silence until somebody's hand goes up. We've got one there.
Hi, Leo. Very cool. Thank you very much. I'm Steve. I'm working on planning.data.gov.uk at the moment. We do actually have an entity resolution problem. I'm just wondering if you can give me some advice. So what we're trying to do is match entities across data sets from different data publishers, like just that are out there. So is it possible to sort of like link entities using fields that are like described differently or perhaps have different standards around them?
Yes, so we don't solve the problem for you. You still have to build your own logic that implements the linking, but the framework, again, is extremely flexible. The only restraint is that it needs to work at the level of comparing pairs of records and needs to output a confidence score from 0 to 1, or it can be deterministic, so you can just like always give a 1. But as long as whatever solution you can come up with conforms to this kind of criteria, you can work with it. Again, we won't solve the problem of actually matching your data, but we can help you orchestrate many matches across multiple data sets, making the result easy to query, to evaluate, etc.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. We can squeeze another very quick one in, if anyone's got one. Otherwise, I'll ask a very quick final question. What do you think success looks like for Matchbox? What would you like people to do with it? What would you consider it had worked if you saw something happening?
I would love for there not to be projects that just really exciting ideas that people want to start, and then they can never actually move very far with them because of not having enough time to invest in the data matching. So the next time someone thinks, oh, what if we could gather some insight by linking these two data sets? Oh, wait, that actually opens a whole new analytical problem that I didn't know about before. I don't have time to invest in this, or I don't have the buy-in, and that just never happens.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully lots of people will be inspired to go away and do that as a result. So Leo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just before I invite our next speaker up, I should say if you're interested in Splink or justice data in general, I think it was DataBytes 40 and DataBytes 42. We had a couple of justice specials, so do check those out on the Institute for Government archive of DataBytes. That brings us to our next speaker, and that is James.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gavin. Yeah, can everyone hear me? Yeah, around the back, good. Online, I think it should be okay. Yeah, okay, I'll make a start now. So, yeah, I'm James Freeland. So I work on the API program across government with a chap called Alex Smith. And we're a two-man team, and together we just manage the API program, really. We have a vision very simple vision, which is to create a world-class API ecosystem across the UK government. What that means in a nutshell is we need to create an environment where users, developers can collaborate in a proactive way. We need to sort of have the right tools and guidance in place to enable users across government to create very good APIs. So that is the vision. In terms of our work, so for them, we engage with departments and ELBs, public sector organisations. We talk about the API landscape and try to help them with API maturity, the API maturity. We manage the API community, which is a monthly forum which we run, well, obviously on a monthly basis, where we have this community of experts who share best practice. And so it's a very good forum for learning. We manage the API technical standards, which are essentially just standards to use by users or developers who intend to create APIs in government. And then we manage the API catalog. I don't know whether anyone has been on api.gov.uk. We manage that. I think at the moment, we've got, I think, 34 departments and other public sector organizations. And I think 234 APIs altogether. So it's interesting to know that. So why are we doing this? Just very quickly, we need to sort of standardize. We need to improve API maturity. We need to sort of accelerate API uptake generally across government. We need to make APIs easy to find, search, and discover. And then, most importantly, cost savings as well. We need to actually encourage API reuse generally across public sector organizations. In that way, savings can be made in the long term. Obviously, reduce time to market, right? Okay. So what is the problem? I won't go into too much detail on that, but the problem's really on, we've got sort of a fragmented API catalogs, which tends to cause duplication across the public sector. API documentation is very poor and not of the required standard. There's a security issue, so users more often are not too sure how to secure APIs properly. And then the value of API generally is not so fully understood by users, not just developers, but people who work across government. So what is the solution? So we've got that problem. Now the solution what we did to solve the problem was to commission a delivery partner. So they did an 8-week structured user research piece of work. And what that enabled us to find, so they, at the end of the sort of 8-week period, they made some findings, and they sort of made some recommendations as well. So the findings essentially were just API maturity, quite low across departments. There's sort of a mixture of well-defined APIs and limited documentation. When you take a helicopter view, again, across government and public sector organizations, on security and governance and API are main concerns. And just general APIs are difficult to discover. Recommendations. So in a nutshell, recommendations based on the user research findings was we need a good system of APIs. We need to be able to discover APIs properly. We need an API-first approach to be mandated across government in general, and then technical support for departments who are struggling. So that pushed us to the next stage, having done the discovery. The next stage in sort of agile mode is alpha. And so we followed up on all those findings and recommendations, and we did a few proof of concepts just to test the effectiveness of what the users said when we sort of made the findings. So we did some POCs, and the key thing that came out of that alpha was the need to have an API hub, which is this sort of a centre where everyone can get together and actually sort of make good APIs, be able to sort of collaborate in a collegiate way. And in that way, you would work towards that world-class system which we're sort of trying to create. So that was Alpha in a nutshell. And this is the dream. These are the key features of the hub. I've put a diagram there, and that actually sort of paints a picture of what we're sort of trying to do. So a central hub, we want best practices across the patch, and we want to encourage API reuse. That would save costs immensely. And of course, we need technical guidance as well to guide users through how to build good API across government. And so, sorry, that was sort of moving at lightning speed there. So I do appreciate this sort of a technical presentation, but the whole dream of API is to get all the public sector organizations and departments all connected so that we can share data seamlessly. We can solve issues around data fragmentation and also sort of work towards meeting some of these sort of new government policies. Yes. So that's the dream. So if you want to talk more to us, I mean, if you want to know more about the API work, the program itself, and some of the technical details, you can contact us on API Community Data Exchange. Yeah, that is where the community forum sits. So you can always sort of drop us a note if you've got any great ideas on how to sort of improve things. And then email us. So that's my email address. And then we've got Alex Smith, who is my boss, actually. So just drop us an email, if you've got any questions to ask. If you've got any ideas, or if you know any experts who might help us improve, APIs generally, across the landscape of the UK government. And lastly, do read our blogs. We've only had one, but the blog explains what we've been trying to do in the last 18 months, from pre-engagement to discovery, why we set up a discovery, and then how we moved into alpha, and then the need for an API hub, which is to just provide the tools which people need to create great APIs. So that is it. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, a reminder, if you're watching us online, you can use the Slido to put your questions, and it's bit.ly/databyte58, all lowercase, if you're not there already. Let's go to the room, though, for the first question. Who would like to ask it? We've got quite a few hands. I'll go. I saw Dave first, and Richard at the back, and then Ahmed at the front.
Hi, David Durant again. Often the most difficult thing with APIs is not the technical side of it, but that some government departments almost want like a contractual relationship between everybody that they share data with. So is there like an MOU template or some other thing that says this is the relationship between these two organisations, or have they become more relaxed since I left government and just let anybody use their data? Because there's a whole thing about if one department becomes reliant on another department's data and their data is bad, then who's at fault?
Right, okay. Yeah, thanks for that question. It's a great question. What we're trying to do is not to force people to do things, and which is why we have the engagement program. And some of the departments, like the one you've mentioned, you can drop me a note afterwards. We would ring up those departments and talk to those contacts on why we think they should use APIs, and sort of point them in the right direction in terms of how to do the right things. Obviously provide them with the benefits of why we think APIs are better off being used in data sharing rather than the, conventional processes which they are using. But just sort of a benefits pitch in terms of use APIs for data sharing. It will provide you this added value, and it would provide you a great level of security in terms of sort of sharing the data in comparison to the conventional method you've got in place.
Thanks. Next question at the back.
Hi, my name's Richard Leeming. I'm here partly because I'm a consultant working on data projects with public sector organisations, and I'm pleased to see that Historic England are on your list, and I may have been partly responsible for helping them go down that route. But I'm also an elected councillor in an inner London borough, and I note that there are, I think, precisely 6 local councils and combined authorities on those lists, and I think this is something that local authorities should be doing much more of. What do you think you can do to persuade local councils to make their data much more widely available?
Yeah, another great question. So, I mean, as part of the program, I think we've met a couple of times with the local government association. I think 3 or 4 times. So we just asked them generally what they're doing with API and how they support local government. So we've sort of had a few engagements with them. They do tell us how their APIs are used. But I mean, as you have said, I mean, there is that challenge, isn't it, to get more local authorities to use API. So that's number one. But we're sort of hoping, secondly, with the new government blueprints, with the push from, the sort of modern digital government, that blueprint paper, there would be so much more leverage from the centre to give local government a push again, to encourage more local governments to actually sort of sign up and open up their services to using API. So I think that would actually sort of solve the problem. I think the sort of modern digital government, but again, how long that would take to play out, I cannot comment on that. But there is a program involving this. Again, happy to sort of, if you could contact me after this or just drop me a note, quite happy to follow that up again. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to come down to the front next. Ahmed.
Thank you. That's Ahmed Barclay from ONS. I had a couple of questions. One, I thought was sort of the obvious one because you've done the discovery in the alpha and kind of what's in store for the beta. But the second bit was any relationship between this and the kind of National Data Library project, which obviously somehow sits within DCIT as well. And if you know anything about where that's going and if it's, they're evolving together or if it's really a separate thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can see Gavin smiling because he knows I'm going to dodge that one because National Data Library is evolving so many policy areas. And I mean, prior to coming in here, I mean, I've just been sort of told not to sort of talk about it, National Data Library, because it is evolving. Yeah.
Sorry, just on the first bit of the question, is there kind of a beta plan for this, and kind of did you have a sense of, would you be able to give kind of a hint of kind of what's coming next in your own project?
Yeah, again, good point. So the beta plan is to get the API Hub up and running, get it into private beta mode, right? And we're hoping once we can do that, we would move into the next stage. And then some of the sort of key features in that hub would help deliver things like the National Data Library, which you have said, but because the things like APIs and integration within that. We think that hub would help deliver, some of the deliverables of that program. So, which is why we're running this program on the side. So, once the National Data Library gets going, we should be able to just sort of make, so fit all those key elements in, and all these sort of data flows, all this sort of integration between systems and data will happen. I think I'll stop there on the NDL. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 final questions. I'll come to Sarah in a moment, but first going online. What kind of APIs do you assume? APIs which help interaction within public sector entities or ones which let outer organisations access public data easily? So I suppose what sort of APIs are we talking about?
Yeah, we're talking about public APIs. I mean, APIs published in the public domain like we would have in api.gov, which citizens and people who work in government can access.
Great, thank you. And we've got a question right there.
Hi, my name's Sarah Thelwall and I run an organisation called MyCake. We specialise in looking at the financial health of charities and run a data platform holding financial data on as many of those as we can up and down the country, hundreds of thousands. I'm going to give an illustrative example of Richard's point about local authority data. So if we think of the value of charities in the delivery of health services and the important role that plays in reducing the burden on the public purse, one of the things that makes an enormous difference to the viability of their business models is the importance of business rates relief. That data is released by each local authority independently in any format they choose. I have no mechanism for aggregating that data, let alone modelling the impact of its diminution, which is a serious risk when local authority budgets have been squeezed over the last 10 years and more. So if it were possible to have an API that published that data on a per local authority basis, it would transform our ability to model that kind of impact. As it stands at the moment, I can't see any chance of that happening. But if you were able to consider that as a possibility for the sorts of things that we would benefit from at a local authority level, other equivalents would be grants, contracts. So instead of publishing an Excel sheet of all spending over 500 quid, an API for that would be transformative.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm happy to sort of take that one back and sort of connect with the local government association, yeah, to do that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, James, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now, I did say at the start, we do now have a free slot. So if anybody does fancy a bit of Data Bytes open mic, anyone fancy speaking for 8 minutes on something? Do make yourself known now, if anyone is brave enough. If not, we can have drinks sooner. That's fine. I'm not seeing any hands go up. That would have been very courageous, I have to say. Which means that I will bring us to a close with a few parish notices. You will be able to watch this event back on YouTube or Slido immediately after this event. There will be a blog post and audio to follow, and hopefully we'll be able to do something with what Andrea wanted to talk about tonight as well. Please do share all of those things as widely as you can. The next Data Bytes will be that AI special on the 23rd of October. Do sign up to bit.ly/pddatabytes, all lowercase, if you want to find out about future events, and indeed sign up for the next one. Any ideas on speakers, do come and grab me or email events@public.digital. And all that remains for me to say are 3 very big thank yous. First of all, to PD for hosting, to all of you for coming and asking some brilliant questions this evening. And please do join me in thanking our 3 fantastic speakers this evening. Thank you very much indeed.